Picture a 12-year-old blind only child who's told by her controlling parents that she's weak and fragile and helpless. Now picture a 15-year-old with a younger sister who mostly grows up without parents because his mother died when he was young and his father is off fighting the Fire Nation. At first glance, there appears to be no common ground between them. But this is not the case. They're both very anxious and self-conscious, though they pretend adamantly that they're not. The 12-year-old has extraordinary powers, but her parents don't accept her for who she really is, even when she shows her powers to them, because that's not the person they want her to be. They want to make her into someone she is simply not. This causes her to be defensive to anyone who says they want to help her. She rarely opens herself up, because when she has in the past, she's been brutally rejected. Meanwhile, the 15-year-old may not have an image forced on him that he doesn't want, but he nonetheless takes up an image that doesn't fit him at the time, the image of the skilled warrior. He acts tougher than he really is because he's scared secretly that he doesn't measure up to his father and the other warriors of his tribe. Ironically, only when he lets his guard down and opens himself up to greater emotional and psychological growth does he become the kind of warrior he always thought of himself as. This is the story of that guy and that girl. This is Avatar Explained, Sokka and Toph edition. The first question everyone always asks about these two is, did they get together? There is a significant number of people who believe that Sokka is the father of Su Yin, Toph's younger daughter, whom we see in the Legend of Korra. I certainly don't think this theory is completely insane. Su Yin does look and act like the child of Sokka and Toph. Her skin is definitely dark enough that her father likely has the same skin color as Sokka's. I don't think that's where the showrunners were going with the two of them, but if they had wanted to close off this possibility entirely, they should have revealed Su Yin's father during the Legend of Korra, and they didn't. Regardless of whether I believe this theory is true, I like it a lot on a character and thematic level. It's a very evocative idea. Personally, when I think about it, I always think about it happening during a low point in both of their lives. I think of Sokka losing Suki, whether she left him or died, and I think of Toph reeling from the end of her relationship with Lin's father, Kanto. She comes to see him and tells herself she just wants to talk, but it gradually turns into more than that. Toph discovers she's pregnant, but she doesn't tell anyone the baby's Sokka's. She knows it would destroy both of their reputations. It's possible Sokka doesn't even find out. Now, I'd like to say that I don't want to turn this analysis into Tokka fanfiction, so I'll stop. But it's not surprising that so many people want these two to be a couple. Toph is the only major heroic character at the end of Avatar: The Last Airbender who is not in a romantic relationship. Katara has Aang, and Zuko has Mai. Sokka has Suki, but she never seems like a real member of Team Avatar to a lot of people, including me. She never travels with the group for a long period of time. In the first 2 seasons, she appears a grand total of 3 times. The only battle she plays a major role in is the final one. Outside of the opening sequence of The Legend of Korra, she is never mentioned at all in the show, and it is not hard to understand why. She is something of a non-presence. To the extent that she does have a personality, she's portrayed as practically perfect in every possible way. That's a little hard to relate to or sympathize with. This analysis is not a defense of the Sokka and Toph pairing, so much as it is an explanation of it and an exploration of the relationship as a whole. Bear with me. Toph is first introduced in episode 204, The Swamp, in which Aang has a vision of her. However, the real her does not appear until episode 206, The Blind Bandit. The group is surprised by her. They're attending an earthbending competition called the Earth Rumble, and they're expecting all the participants to be muscly men, and for the most part they are. When Katara laments that this competition is going to be nothing but a group of guys throwing rocks at each other, Sokka cheerfully says that this is what he came to see. But when the Boulder, a hilariously macho man and the top contender for the title, loses to a little girl who goes by the nickname of the Blind Bandit, Sokka is appalled and Katara is shocked. This little girl is, of course, Toph, and she won because she waited and listened instead of relying on brute strength. To say that Toph and Sokka don't become friends quickly would be putting it mildly. Toph is the warrior Sokka has always thought of himself as, and she frequently embarrasses him. Toph enjoys making fun of people, though she usually doesn't mean anything by it. Remember, this is someone whose version of showing affection is to punch someone in the arm. Sokka has always been the butt of jokes since the start of the show, but these jokes become more frequent and more significant after Toph joins the group. In episode 208, The Chase, she talks about Team Avatar going against Mei, Azula, and Ty Lee as a 3-on-3 showdown. Sokka corrects her, stating that Team Avatar actually has 4 members. Toph responds by saying no, she did not make a mistake. She did not count Sokka because he is not a bender. When Sokka objects to this, she amends her initial judgment to 3 versus 3 plus Sokka, much to Sokka's annoyance. As we see in episode 304, Sokka's Master, Sokka is quite insecure about not being a bender. He sometimes feels quite out of place among the skilled benders of Team Avatar. Toph doesn't know this at the time, but she enjoys getting a rise out of Sokka when she sees that it does bother him. If one looks at their interaction from the Serpent's Pass forward through a romantic lens, there are several things that make more sense. Toph being offended that Sokka doesn't thank him for saving his life could be taken simply as her disliking his lack of gratitude, but considering that he doesn't thank her because he's too busy worrying about whether Suki is okay, I don't think assuming she's jealous because of her own feelings for him is altogether unreasonable. Additionally, Toph clings to him often from this point forward. One could say, of course she clings to him, she needs to cling to someone, she's blind. However, if you look back at their interactions, you'll see she clings to him more often than random chance would suggest. That doesn't necessarily mean she's in love with him, but it does mean they have been growing closer. At the end of episode 304, Sokka's Master, Aang and Katara openly say how glad they are to see Sokka come back, but Toph hides her feelings. Obviously, she missed him too, as evidenced by how she blushes, but she doesn't say this. Is this a case of her not wanting to reveal her affection for him because she doesn't want the others to see her vulnerable side? Or is this a case of her not wanting to reveal her affection for him because she has romantic feelings toward him? That's for you to decide. Even if she does feel romantically about him, it's a one-sided crush. Sokka is 3 years older than her after all, and when you're that age, 3 years is a canyon-sized gap. But that doesn't mean there aren't beautiful platonic moments they share. Their friendship grows significantly throughout the series. Sokka regrets not mentioning often enough how cool it is that she invented metal bending. Considering that Sokka hated bending at the start of the series, this could be considered character development. More importantly, it reveals how his initial frustration toward Toph has transformed into admiration. At the very least, he treats her like a younger sister. Interestingly, he doesn't treat Katara like a younger sister, even though that's technically what she is, unless he is trying to feel superior to her. He treats her like an older sister, or even like a mother. In the very first episode of the show, Katara insults Sokka, saying she's been stuck doing all the work while he's been pretending to be a brave soldier. In episode 307, The Runaway, when he's having a heartfelt conversation with Toph, he admits that Katara was right. She has been strong since their mother died because she needed to be. She took care of both of them. He admits that because his mother died so long ago, he can't even picture her face. When he thinks of his mother's face, he can only think of Katara. Though Sokka tells Toph this to help her understand Katara better, it's also a statement of how much he trusts Toph. If he didn't care about her, he wouldn't have told her this. It's something he hasn't told anyone, not even Katara. Seeing him open up to her, Toph decides to open up to him too. The bond between them has grown as strong as iron. They see how alike they are, though they both pretend things don't bother them, and they both obscure their true feelings with laughter, deflection, and mockery. they still have trouble handling their emotions. They recognize that they're more like each other than they are like Aang, Katara, or Zuko. There's a secretive tone to this conversation. They're not telling each other these things just because the other person needs to hear it, but also because they know each other so well. If their relationship was still like it was early in The Chase, they would have been more guarded and uncertain. It's a very personal conversation, made even more so by how Toph explicitly tells Sokka to not reveal to Katara all the messy emotional baggage she spilled out to him. Sokka promises not to, and he keeps that promise, but it doesn't matter. Katara was swimming below them, listening to what they said. I love how it's not only Toph who has more kind things to say about Katara than she would admit. It's also Sokka. That similarity emphasizes how these two deal with stress and pressure in the same way. Katara, who is much more upfront with her emotions, has had doubts about both of them throughout the show, but listening to them open up to each other like this alleviates these doubts. This scene is great for many reasons, but my favorite thing about it is how it pays off how the bond between these two has developed. For those who have been paying attention to how they have grown closer, this scene is a reward. For those who haven't, it's a revelation. And hopefully it inspires them to rewatch the series and pay closer attention to the bond between these two. However, part of me wishes the dynamic between them had been better explored. While there are very few episodes that aren't absolutely essential to the core of the show, and I know it would be difficult to sacrifice any Season 3 episode in exchange for one that sent Toph and Sokka off into the wilderness together, an episode like that would have been illuminating. It would have been fascinating to watch how they interact over an extended period of time apart from the rest of Team Avatar. An idea like that makes me wish they had made a 4th season, although I suppose they could always explore that dynamic in the comics. I'm not sure how one would set it up, but the storyline could go as follows. Sokka accompanies Toph back to her hometown. This is before Toph reconciles with her father in the comics. They try a number of different schemes to convince her parents to accept her, but none of these schemes work. They have to stop a Fire Nation baddie from destroying the town, and they do. Toph rescues Sokka. He thanks her, and so does the rest of the town. But not her parents. They turn away. Toph is crushed. She pretends not to be, but Sokka sees, and the two of them have a heartfelt chat about how they're viewed as failures in the minds of others. They promise to always have each other's backs. The moment ends and they joke and play rough. They act like the moment they shared didn't matter, but they look back at each other and they both know it did. They return to the group with something important. A map, a piece of a puzzle, a plan, whatever. The specifics aren't terribly important. What's important is that there's real power in the idea of the two of them spending this much time together. Avatar: The Last Airbender is, perhaps more than any other animated show, about connection, and that is why it's so powerful. It handles many complicated themes in a sharp and mature way, but it always brings itself back around to the idea of connection. This isn't a vapid show about how the power of friendship will always save the day and how we have to hold hands and sing. Rather, it's a show about how our relationships, difficult as they may be to keep from falling apart, make us stronger. It's a show about how much of ourselves is revealed through the connections we make. Through these connections, we learn more about ourselves and the world around us. Whenever the world leaves two of its characters alone for an extended period of time, in an interesting scenario, something beautiful and fascinating always blossoms, and there's no reason to believe that would not be the case with Sokka and Toph. Whether you like the idea of them being involved in a romantic relationship, or think it's a terrible idea, I hope I was able to make you see how strong the bond between them becomes. What's fascinating about these two isn't how different they are, but rather how similar they are. They might have had vastly different life experiences, with Sokka growing up in a hut and being forced to fill shoes he was not prepared to fill, and Toph growing up in a mansion and being denied the roles and responsibilities she wanted, but they arrive at the same place emotionally, and they deal with those emotions in much the same way. It may not be a way that characters like Katara and Zuko, both of whom are deeply serious about life, or a character like Aang, who is deeply playful, can understand, but they understand each other perfectly. Over the course of the series, they gradually recognize this, and they grow much closer as a result. So thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you want to see more content like this, and you have the money. Anything will help, even $1 a month. Aside from that, watch more Avatar, it's a fantastic show, and don't forget to tune in to the next Avatar Explained video. I swear it will be coming soon. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades!